The House of Bitter Bloom. Chapter 1. The Garden Behind Locked Doors. The first time I saw the house on Damaris Street, it was raining the way grief rains suddenly, insistently, as if the sky had finally let go of a secret it could no longer keep. The mansion stood back from the road behind a wrought iron fence, its bars smelted into a swarm of roses, each iron petal curled like a tongue holding words that had rusted away. Vines fussed over the high stone walls. An old jacaranda leaned as if to listen. The place had the posture of a person who does not name their pain, proud, still, and unmistakably cracked. I was late for the interview because my umbrella had turned traitor in the wind and collapsed like a dying starfish. For a moment I hesitated outside, fingers on the cold scrollwork of the gate, reading the gold plaque screwed into the stone. Asterisk, asterisk. Lacuna House, asterisk, asterisk. By appointment only. The gate was unlocked, or else it wanted me. The latch gave at a pressure that felt like consent disguised as coincidence. I stepped into a garden organized by someone who understood both beauty and foreclosure. Gravel hissed underfoot. Cypress trees punctuated the path like exclamation marks. Glossy leaves beaded with rain. Black-lipped irises and hellebores bowed, their throats filled with water. As I climbed the 2 shallow steps to the front door, the brass knocker, cast as a rose with thorns for fingers, looked enough like an invitation to feel like a dare. I lifted it and knocked. The sound traveled along corridors of air I could not see. I felt, as if in a mirror behind my sternum, a faint answering tap. The door opened to a man in a dark suit that lived somewhere between old money and good morning. He was not handsome in the clean way that erases detail. He was handsome in the way that made you notice too much. His hair had grown out of its last careful cut and curled at the ends. His mouth could have been cruel if not for the soft parentheses etched into his cheeks, the ghost of a smile that perhaps used to visit more often. The eyes were the kind that read you for subtext first, text later gray. Not like the sky, but like a blade dipped in milk. "You're early to be late," he said, voice low and even. "Miss Voss, I presume." "Elodie," I corrected before I could stop myself. Some names when spoken feel like a hand at the back of your neck, orienting you. "Elodie," he repeated, as if testing how my name felt in his mouth. Cassian Rowan. He did not offer a hand, and I did not extend mine. We were 2 people careful with touch, either because we needed it too much or because we had learned it could be taken. He stepped back, and I crossed the threshold. The foyer was a long inhale of air smelling of lemon oil and rain. Marble floors, pale as the inside of seashells, reflected a chandelier that looked like a question answered by light. Paintings tracked me. A woman whose mouth had been unpainted and left to the imagination. A boy in a sailor suit holding a wolf by the leash. A field of white roses painted white as if the artist refused to show the blood they drank. Dust did not settle here. I had the sense that the house rewarded exactness with mercy. "You made good time, considering the storm," Cassian said. "You live?" "South End," I answered, "above the antique shop with the green awning." "Ah," he said, already knowing, or pretending to know, more than that. He led me past a narrow table where crystal decanters kept watch like tall-eyed birds. I caught my reflection in a gilt mirror. Dark hair pinned without conviction, the stubborn, vulnerable shape of my mouth, eyes that used to belong to a girl who believed winning meant being believed in. The coat I wore had belonged to my mother. It still did, in ways I refused to inventory. We arrived at a room that would have been a library if there had been more books and fewer fragments. Glass domes covered other people's memories. A silver watch with a dent where the heart might be, a pair of opera glasses encrusted with a paste of pearl and longing, a lace handkerchief with initials so finely stitched they were almost hypothetical. Cassian gestured to a low chair upholstered in something that had once been a color and now was only patience. "Tea?" he asked. When I nodded, he poured from a teapot with a hairline crack that looked like the outline of a country lost to war. The cup warmed my hands. "I read your portfolio." He sat across from me, forearms on his knees, one ankle crossed over the other. The posture said, either I am at ease or I have made a ritual of pretending to be. You catalogued for the Dawson estate after the fire. You identified 3 pieces they didn't know had survived. "I had help," I said, "because humility is a small God who gives small blessings." "From whom?" He lifted an eyebrow. "The pieces themselves," I said. "Things want to be known. They get loud if you listen long enough." He watched me as if that answer were both dangerous and correct. "You were hired to help me catalog Lacuna House," he said. "But that's only the first language. The house requires a second." "What's the second?" "Obedience," he said, almost smiling. "Or if you prefer, attention trained until it feels like surrender." I considered refusing the metaphor. I considered refusing him, but I had not come all this way to be careful. "I can do attention," I said. "Surrender is negotiable." "A healthy distrust," he murmured. "Good. I prefer my staff unwilling to be owned." The word staff was a tight shoe, a little too small for the job my body already desired. The listing had been procedural, almost boring. Asterisk, asterisk, archivist needed. Experience with fragile materials. Discretion required. Asterisk, asterisk. No mention of the rumors that coughed behind the city's teeth, that Lacuna House had been a sanctuary or a prison, that a woman had once lived here who taught the roses to bleed when spoken to in French, that its last mistress had disappeared with a trunk of letters and a promise to return only when the winter forgot its name. He gave me a contract, thin paper, thick ink. I scanned the language. Confidentiality. No photographs, no press, no after-hours tours for lovers of ruin. A clause underlined twice. Asterisk, asterisk, no item leaves Lacuna House without written permission of the owner. Asterisk, asterisk, I signed where the paper told me to sign. We who have needed money learn to read the necessary sentences and trust the margins to God. "Come," he said, "let me show you the garden. It is the only honest room in the house." We moved down a corridor whose wallpaper had faded florals that refused to die with dignity. At the end, a glass door admitted the light with the hospitality of a well-paid host. The garden unwrapped itself as we stepped out. Rain had thinned to a lace that hung between leaves. Somewhere, a fountain made the sound of an argument resolved. "The former owner planted the roses," Cassian said. "Penelope Lacuna. Every variety had a name, and every name had a price. People say she bred a rose that opened black and kept its color, no matter the Sunday." "And do you say it?" I asked. He looked at me. "I say that every legend is a mask for a smaller truth people are ashamed to say aloud. And what truth is this one hiding?" "That Penelope was exquisitely lonely," he said, "and that people forgave her everything because her loneliness was glamorous." We stopped before a locked gate inside the garden, iron nested within iron, a secret inside a secret, The center of the gate bore a medallion carved as a skull crowned with roses. On either side, stone pillars bore a line of poetry in a language my mouth recognized without understanding. Asterisk, asterisk, amor dat ponum, amor dat vitam, asterisk, asterisk. Love gives punishment, love gives life. I did not translate it then. I only felt a small, precise ache, as if my bones remembered a weight they had once been allowed to carry. "What's beyond?" I asked. "The bitter bloom," he said. "Penelope's private garden. No one enters." "Not even you?" The corner of his mouth twitched, which in other men might have been a loss of control, but in Cassian was merely a disclosure. "Even me," he said. "A condition of the deed. I am to abide this." He slid a key into the lock and then, without turning it, withdrew the key and returned it to his pocket. The door did not so much as tremble. "Cruel," I said. "Necessary," he said. "Sometimes we keep rooms locked, not because of what waits inside, but because the lock is a promise we made to ourselves." The rain stopped with the abruptness of forgiven debt. Sun unfurled, as if making its own quiet entrance. A cat stepped onto the path ahead of us, a long-bodied creature the color of spilled ink, with a white crescent at its throat. It sat and blinked, as if bored of our slow conversation. "Hello, Leto," Cassian said gently. "Be kind." "She's yours?" I asked. "She belongs to no one," he said. "Leto comes and goes. Recently she has chosen me more often than not." The cat approached and curved herself around my ankles, as if drawing a boundary where my body ended and the garden began. Calm moved through me like a draft. I had not realized how thirsty I was for something simple. My phone vibrated in my pocket with the insistence of any world that refuses to be ignored. I did not look. There are days when the old griefs ring like telemarketers, certain that this time you will answer and buy what they're selling. I had already spent my savings. Cassian led me along a hedge, parted like a seam to a low glass house, its panes fogged with green breath. Inside, damp warmth kissed my face. Tables held seedlings labeled in a hand exact as a blade. The names arrived like confessions. Asterisk, asterisk, night candle, widow's tongue, Saint Agatha's thorn. Asterisk, asterisk, one small pot held soil without anything breaking it. The label read, asterisk, asterisk, resurrection, pending, asterisk, asterisk. "You impressed Mrs. Dawson," he said, watching me read the tags. "She said, you saved what was worth saving." "I only counted," I said. "Other people do the burning. My work is arithmetic after the fact." He set a hand on the table, the tendons visible as if his skin had been taught to be transparent. I wondered what it would be to be touched by such a hand. I thought of my mother's wedding ring, its circle left around my finger like a pale memory of gold. I thought of the letters she used to write in the afternoons, the ones she never sent, notes to people she did not admit to knowing. I had found one after she died, tucked into a book on edible flowers. Asterisk, asterisk, I cannot soften the world for you. I can only make you a knife that fits your hand. Asterisk, asterisk. She had been right. I had learned to be the blade that cut me free. "Do you believe," Cassian asked suddenly, "that people can be curated the way we curate objects? That if you arrange the rooms correctly, a person will become who they were meant to be?" No, I said, though part of me wanted to say yes, because yes would be a map. People ruin their own exhibits. They rearrange themselves when you turn your back. They lie. "And you?" He tilted his head slightly. "Do you lie, Elodie?" "When it pays," I said. when it is kinder than the truth. And here? Here, I said. I am trying to be hired. He laughed, the sound low and brief. Joy, perhaps, but trained. You're hired, he said, and I felt the relief light up the floor under me. Then, almost as an afterthought, with a condition, of course. The story had started to sound, briefly, like kindness. I should have been wary of the pivot, but I was not. Want starves caution, which is? I asked. You will sleep here for the first month, he said. The cataloging is most accurate if conducted at unusual hours. The house keeps different records at night. I have an apartment, I said, and a cat. Bring the cat, he said, or you may find Leto has already claimed your pillow. That's not negotiable, he finished. I know it's peculiar, but peculiar things require peculiar custodians. You will have a room on the 3rd floor. There are rooms that never finish deciding what they are. Avoid those. I tasted the word avoid and found it metallic. There is a version of me that would have insisted on normalcy then, that would have invoked boundaries and schedules and the way healthy lives are meant to look when framed on other people's mantles. That version had gone missing the day my mother's breath had left her body like a letter finally posted. I had, since then, become someone who was not comforted by rules unless they were also beautiful. All right, I said. A month. Excellent. His face did not change, and yet the air around him softened a fraction, like a room admitting its first unguarded sigh in years. There are other conditions, he added, and I almost smiled at the inevitability. Yes, I prompted. The bitter bloom is forbidden, he said, as if reciting a creed. You do not enter that garden. You do not attempt the lock. You do not press your ear to the gate to listen for what you think you hear. You do not, under any condition, remove anything from that space. If it's forbidden, I said, why tell me? Why give it a name? To spare you the feeling that you have not been warned, he said. He looked at me then in a way that felt like standing very still as a hawk's shadow passed over. Not devouring, merely aware how quickly devouring could happen. Curiosity is a form of hunger. It rarely travels alone. He gave me a set of keys. They sat in my palm with the weight of objecting. Each key wore a satin tag with neat handwriting. Asterisk, asterisk, front gate, side door, conservatory, library, 3rd floor east, asterisk, asterisk. The last key had no tag. It was black iron gone, more black with age. What is this one for? I asked. He considered. The pause was precise and deliberate, as if he were selecting a scalpel. That key, he said, is for a door you should never open. And if there is a fire? I tried for lightness. An arrow shot toward whatever part of him accepted jokes. If there is a fire, you will follow me, he said, and I will let the house choose what burns. We left the glass house and returned to the main path. The sun had pierced the clouds and scribbled gold messages on the flagstones. Leto threaded between our legs with the casual confidence of a creature mistaken for delicate many times, and corrected the error whenever it pleased her. You may begin tomorrow, Cassian said, or tonight, if you anticipate not sleeping. I rarely sleep, I said. I did not add that when I do, I detach from my body like a moth from a pinned display and wander rooms that do not belong to any house I know, rooms that feel like the afterlife of promises. Tonight is fine. He nodded. Very well. Frances will bring fresh linens. She refuses to retire, so do not attempt to dismiss her help and 80 every odis. Frances is the housekeeper, and its conscience, he said. She will tolerate you as long as you prove you are not here to steal ghosts for resale. We stepped back into the foyer. A woman in her 60s stood beneath the chandelier like a lighthouse, refusing to be decorative. Frances's hair was braided against her skull with a practicality that made me want to stand up straighter. She assessed me the way a surgeon assesses a new scalpel, not whether it shines, but whether it will do what must be done without trembling. "You're thin," she said without insult. "You'll catch cold if you insist on dressing like a romantic idea." "I'll try to dress like an unromantic fact," I said. "Good luck," she said, one corner of her mouth hitching. "Mr. Rowan feeds the house, but the house keeps all its meat for itself." "Frances," Cassian said mildly. "Sir," she answered, unimpressed, and then turned those skeptical eyes back to me. "If you hear crying on the stairs, it's the pipes. If you see a boy run past you with wet footprints, it's the boy we never had. If you smell roses at midnight, shut your window and do not invite things in to count your teeth." "I see," I said, not seeing at all. "You don't?" she said, not unkindly. "You will." She left us. The silence she took her hands off of rang like crystal. "It's not haunted," Cassian said, and for the first time his voice felt like a confession varnished to resemble reassurance. "Not in the way you think. The house remembers. Memory looks like haunting if you've never seen it be useful." I followed him up the main staircase. The banister was smooth from the hands of the dead in the living, equal donors to the patina. The third-floor corridor breathed coolness, the kind that collects where heat cannot be bothered to climb. He opened a door with a key tagged ***, third floor east ***, and gestured me inside. The room kept its beauty the way some people keep their faith, stubbornly, despite evidence. Tall windows faced the garden. A narrow bed looked at the windows like a pilgrim looks at a gate. A desk waited under a sconce shaped like a moth. On the mantel, a glass dome covered a sprig of something dry and black. I did not look too closely in case it wanted to be looked at, and would take that as an invitation to be known. "This was Penelope's secretary's room," Cassian said. "She left one morning and never returned, or rather, she returned too often to count." "That sentence means something and nothing," I said. "Yes," he said, standing with his hands in his pockets, the shape of solitude anthropomorphized. "Dinner is at 8. If you fail to appear, Frances will feed you anyway and tell me stories about your lack of manners." "I'll be there," I said. He left, and the room closed around me with a sigh like a dress settling. I set my bag on the bed and crossed to the window. The garden below sprawled in a composure that threatened to come alive if you blinked too slowly. The inner gate to the bitter bloom sat black and still, an eyelid permanently lowered. As I watched, wind parted the leaves of a climbing rose, and I saw that the iron of the gate was mottled in the shape of fingerprints, as if someone had pressed their hands there many times. I lifted my palm and placed it against the glass of my window, a girl's gesture, a ghost's rehearsal. I unpacked 3 books, 2 dresses, a sweater that smelled faintly of soap that no longer exists, a photograph of my mother taken by a stranger who had caught us laughing. I placed the photograph face down. Memory is also a predator. I have always refused to let it think it owns me. At 7:50 I descended to a dining room whose table could have seated 18, and instead made an audience of 3 place settings. Cassian sat at the head, not because he liked it, I realized, but because he could think there. Frances set a bowl before me that looked like autumn translated, roasted carrots, barley, slivers of onion like transparent coins. I ate with the gratitude of the rescued. Cassian's conversation was neither effortless nor effortful. It was disciplined, a generosity taught to behave. He asked about my mother without asking about my mother. I answered in a way that allowed him to learn where the landmines were without teaching him how to detonate them. He told me about the house as if it were a living thing whose organs he diagrammed and named. He did not tell me who had taught him to love what devours the soft-hearted. After dinner, I went to the library. I began with the simplest arithmetic, inventorying shelves, indexing labels, noting which spines looked thumbed by a particular kind of need. I wrote the way I breathe when I don't think of breathing, automatically, thoroughly, with small pauses to make sure I still existed in the room. Outside, the garden argued with the night and lost. At midnight, because my body clock keeps the liturgy of insomnia, I made tea in a kitchen that kept its copper pots polished like trophies. Leto appeared, jumped onto the counter, put a paw delicately into the running water, and then shook it, offended by her own curiosity. "You're a fool," I told her. "We'll get on." And, Adele. She blinked and licked her paw slowly, a queen cleaning a ring. On my way back to the third floor, the house pressed a whisper into my ear that was not made of sound. I stopped at the landing. The air had cooled. A rose scent moved through the corridor as if someone had carried a bouquet past and forgotten their reason. Francis's voice returned to me. Asterisk, asterisk, if you smell roses at midnight, shut your window and do not invite things in to count your teeth. Asterisk, asterisk. I do not believe in warnings until they become retroactively wise. And yet I shut the window. When I lay down, the mattress received me with a tenderness that almost made me cry. Exhaustion crept up from the soles of my feet, trying to argue me into mercy. I closed my eyes and saw instead the black-throated iris bending beneath the rain, the iron gate with fingerprints rusted in, the black key without a tag. Sleep came the way a thief comes, after you say aloud that you have nothing left worth taking. Some time later, I could not have told you the hour. A sound pulled me up through the water of dreams and set me gently on the surface of wakefulness. It was subtle enough to be a sound made inside a mind and not by a world, except that I knew instinctively it was neither my mind nor my world. A soft, precise click, like a lock remembering its childhood. Then another. Then the slow inhalation of hinges long denied. I rose and went to the window. The garden's lamps traced faint circles on wet paths. Beyond the lamps, along the shadowed spine of ivy, something moved. I do not mean a person. I mean the sensation a person makes when they are near, even if your eyes insist you are alone. The inner gate stood open. The bitter bloom had unlatched its mouth. I should have woken Cassian. I should have summoned Francis and borrowed her lack of awe. Instead, because there are archetypes we carry not by choice but by the cartridge of blood we walk, I fetched my coat, stepped into the corridor, and descended. The silence greeted my footsteps like velvet receives a blade, more interested in the cut than in the cutter. At the conservatory door, the smell of roses hit me full in the face, not sweet but medicinal, like a balm prepared by someone who knows you will not like what heals you. The outer garden admitted me with a hush that might have been permission. The path to the inner gate felt shorter at night, the way pain feels shorter when it is named desire. I reached the gate and stopped. Up close, its ironwork was crazed with detail, each rose open to reveal an eye, each thorn cast to look like a tongue. The lock hung from its hasp, a mouth without orders. From beyond the gate, a breath, but not an animal's. Leaves clicked together, the sound of hands applauding a performance they weren't invited to. My chest tightened and eased, and I knew without knowing how that stepping through would be crossing a sentence written in a language I had not yet learned, but would be fluent in by the time I finished reading. Behind me, the house held its breath. Before me, the garden exhaled. Amor dat ponam, I whispered to no one, and to him and to myself. Amor dat vitam, love gives punishment, love gives life. Both, said a voice at my back, quiet and precise. Cassian, of course he would be there, of course he would have found me. He wore no coat, his shirt sleeves pushed to his forearms. The austerity of him, softened by the fact that he had run there, was the faintest tremor in his breath, as if he were a violin that had just been played. I did not turn. We both stood looking at the dark beyond the gate, which was not empty but full of things that preferred not to be witnesses, yet had consented tonight to watch. It opened, I said. Yes. His voice broke around that small word, the way surf breaks around a stone that refuses to be worn smooth. It hasn't since. He cut himself off, as if memory were a dog that had learned to heel but still sometimes lunged. Since when? I asked. Since I promised it I would not ask for anything I was not prepared to lose, he said. And are you prepared? No, he said. And then, almost laughing at himself, not for you. We were two people standing at an unlocked gate, and the night smelled like roses that had fed on more than rain. Behind us, the house waited, and in front of us, the garden wanted. Tell me not to go in, I said. I can't, he said. I've learned that telling people not to enter places they already live is a cruelty. One step would put me past the threshold. One step would rearrange the landscape of our lives into something that made sense only from above. Then come with me, I said, turning at last to face him. He looked at me with those gray eyes, dipped in milk and honed by loss, and something passed through them like a decision burned into the bark of a living tree. Indelible, painful, chosen. All right, he said. We stepped together. The gate, relieved of the burden of refusal, shut gently behind us like a hand on a lover's back. And the bitter bloom, at last unguarded, opened its 1,000 dark mouths to speak. Chapter 2. The Law of the Bitter Bloom. We stepped into the bitter bloom the way a promise steps into a mouth quietly and with knowledge of its consequences. The air changed. It felt occupied by attention, not hostile, not kind. Clauses in waiting. The paths were not gravel here. They were laid with old tiles the color of dark tea, each one stamped with a letter or a number as if salvaged from a printing press drowned at sea. Roses grew not in beds but in intentions. They climbed trellises shaped like unfinished sentences, wreathed statues whose faces were left uncarved. Every blossom kept its color as if by vow. Crimsons that refused to panic in the moonlight, whites that did not become the color of ghosts, a blue so deep it made the night look shallow. And there, interspersed like a thought you try not to think, were roses that opened black and stayed black, their petals catching the lamplight without returning it. Penelope's grammar, Cassian murmured. She trained the garden to speak in tenses. Which one are we in? The one that asks you to stop pretending you can stand outside the sentence. The gate shut behind us with a sound like a decision. The latch did not fall. There was no lock. We were kept not by iron but by relevance. Stay close, he said. Is there a map? I asked, more for something to do with the part of me that believed in diagrams. There is a law, he said. Maps are for land you survive by walking. Laws are for land that survives by you walking it. We moved along a path that narrowed until our shoulders brushed the dark, glossy leaves. The rose's scent shifted as we passed, sharp as green apples, powdery as grandmother's throat, bitter as medicine, fresh as a new bruise. It was not perfume, it was a lexicon. Once a petal detached and landed in my palm like an oiled coin. The skin there tingled as if a nerve had been taught a new name. "You promised the garden once," I said. "What did you promise?" "That I would not ask it to give back what I had already made it eat," he said. The honesty of that sentence vibrated between us. We had kept this place closed for a decade. Buyer after buyer declined the deed when they learned the conditions. I bought it because I thought I could keep a secret without feeding it. I was wrong. Secrets choose their diets. "What did you feed it?" I asked, perhaps unkind, because hunger makes all questions barbed. He did not look at me. My understanding of what a life is worth, and then when that did not satisfy it, my certainty that grief makes you good. A turn, and the path opened into a clearing so exact it might have been cut into the night with a compass and a knife. In the center stood a sundial on a plinth, the height of a heart. Its gnomon was a thorn the size of a hand, and the dial was engraved not with numbers but with words. Asterisk, asterisk, if, when, again, never. Asterisk, asterisk. The moon laid its thin hand at asterisk, asterisk, when asterisk, asterisk, then trembled toward asterisk, asterisk, again asterisk, asterisk, and fell back. "That is unhelpful," I said. "It's precise," he said, "just not in a human way." Footsteps made a sound behind us that was identical to ours because they were ours, imposed onto us by the garden at a delay so we would not forget. We are always followed by ourselves. Then, ahead, something moved that was not a sound, a figure, not a ghost, because ghosts ask permission with cold, not a person, because people do not glow where their wounds are. She stood half in shadow, her hair pinned in the way an era tells women to pin their sorrows. Her dress was the color of a mouth bitten to silence. Around her wrists, bracelets woven of rose canes, thorns turned inward. "Penelope," Cassian breathed. He did not say it like a man speaking to a portrait he has been forced to inherit. He said it like a student answering a question he had feared he hadn't studied for. She looked at us the way certain portraits look at a room, quietly pleased that someone new had arrived to misunderstand them. When she spoke, her voice came from the hedges, from the pollinated mouths, from the damp dark under the tiles. "People keep bringing me their better selves," she said. "I keep returning the parts they meant to lose." "I didn't bring you," Cassian began, then stopped. The night made the smallest sound of disapproval, like a violin unplayed. "Not this time," she said. "Not unkind. You brought her." Her eyes, if eyes is what you call what watched, rested on me. A small flare of rage rose in me, bright and clean, before I named it fear. I had been brought enough times in my life, to hospital rooms, to offices of men whose desks were too large even for their appetites, to funerals where we were asked to admire a casket's gloss. "I walked," I said. "I am not cargo." "Good," she said, almost smiling. "Then you may pay your own price." "What price?" I asked, though I knew enough stories to know the question was a formality, like the way brides are asked if they consent in rooms where escape routes are decorative. "The garden keeps what is not named," Penelope said. It was built to hold unsaid things until their owners learned to call them by their own names without foreign currency. The law is this: for every memory you take with you, you leave one you never use. I don't take souvenirs, I said. I count. Counting is not neutral. The garden breathed through its thousands of perfumed throats. Counting is a kind of kiss. I won't leave someone else's memory, I said. I won't catalog strangers and tithe myself nothing. Then you understand it, Penelope said. You will, each of you, leave only what is yours. She lifted her hand slightly, the rose cane bracelets pressing small crescents into her soft. And you will not cheat. Our soil is merciless with liars. Cassian's breath changed next to me, a falter and a rearrangement, as if a piece in his chest moved of its own accord. What did you leave before? I asked him, because sometimes the cruel thing is the necessary thing, and it is kinder to do it quickly. My certainty that life owed me a symmetrical ending, he said. He looked not at me but at the thorn dial. It was the only currency I had. It turned out to be counterfeit, but willingly accepted. What will you leave now? Penelope asked. He did not answer. He would not answer until it was too late to retract it. That was the shape of him, the ritual of restraint performed until it became its own species of honesty. And if we do not? I asked, because the part of me that grew up in rooms without exit signs always locates the fire. Then you will stay until you learn to want the price, Penelope said mildly. Love gives punishment, love gives life. Choose which lesson you want first. The roses rustled, an audience settling for the second act. Let me see it, I said, surprising myself. If the garden keeps what is not named, then show me the rooms without labels. The hedges answered as if proud to be understood. They parted along a seam that had not existed until we thought of it. A corridor opened. Along its length, glass cloches sat on plinths, exactly the kind I had seen in the library, covering the archive of other people's tendernesses. Inside each dome lay an object that was also a sentence, a ribbon stained with the color of a vow, a key whose teeth were filed down to the shape of a person's name, a paper bird folded from a telegram. No tags, no dates, no attribution. The cloches sang a high glass note at the edge of hearing, and my teeth ached in sympathy. I can catalog this, I said, because there are declarations we make, not because we believe them, but because believing is sometimes the wheel that follows the declaration. It is not a museum, Penelope said. It is an orchard for the unspoken. The unspoken spoils, I said. Ask anyone who has lived in a house long enough for rot to choose the beams. Something pleased her then. The garden scent shifted to the hard green of a pear not yet ready. What would you leave, Elodie? She asked. It is an unfair thing to be asked to choose what hunger you will no longer store for a winter you survived. And yet the truth came fast and bright, the way a blade sometimes leaves its sheath, as if it had been told the story of what it was for. I will leave my belief that being needed is the safest way to be loved, I said. My voice did not break because it had been trained not to. The training felt suddenly like a cruelty my younger self had been forced to deliver to me. I will stop offering the exact shape of myself that fits the rooms other people have built. Cassian looked at me then as if someone had opened a window between us that he had not noticed had been bricked up. That is not a small thing, Penelope said. I have been small long enough, I said. Silence gathered. It was respectful. Very well, Penelope said. She opened her hands. The cane bracelets tightened, and small points of blood appeared where the thorns had been diligent. Place it. Where? I asked. The way you would place any object you choose to acknowledge, she said, on a shelf whose wood you trust to hold the weight. I stepped toward the nearest cloche. Under it, a thin gold ring, unadorned, the size of a promise made in a kitchen under poor light. Beside it, in the next dome, a metro ticket stamped toward a station that had been renamed since. The next, a lock of hair the color of smoke, everywhere dumb evidence, as the law calls it. I found a dome that held nothing. The label rail below it had a groove, clean and ready. May I? I asked, my hand on the glass. You must, Penelope said. I lifted the cloche. The air under it smelled briefly and exactly like violets and dust, and my mother's winter scarf. I set my hands on either side of the empty plinth. I leave, I said, and I felt the words desire to be something more ceremonial, a prayer with Latin and kneeling. I refused that urge. It would have been a way to escape the plainness of the fact. I leave the habit of swallowing my own hunger before asking if there is bread. The ground under my feet shifted as if the tile letters had rearranged to spell my name and then let it go. A pressure behind my sternum eased like a bookend being moved 2 inches to stop crowding a shelf. Tears came, not generous, not dramatic, functional. I put the cloche back. It chimed once, a bright note, and then was quiet. That will hold, Penelope said. And you? She asked Cassian. He stepped forward. If the garden expected eloquence, it was disappointed and exactly satisfied. I leave, he said, my preference for rooms with locks. The hedges breathed in. The roses made a sound like silk being taught its place. He set his palms on a plinth holding a folded linen napkin, neatly ironed, and then removed the cloche and offered his emptiness to the empty space. I left someone in here once, he said. The words so low it took the roses to carry them to me. Not her body. That went elsewhere. I left the version of her that smelled like lilacs in the winter and apologized with bread. I come here sometimes to remind myself that I have already suffered nobly enough to excuse any future cruelty. I am very good at making punishments look like ethics. He set the glass down. It sang, and then the note went inside itself and disappeared. Something then changed in the air. A low hum that had been running unnoticed until it stopped went quiet. The path ahead brightened not with light but with legibility. Penelope inclined her head. Her bracelets loosened, and she slipped her hands free. The rose canes fell, and where they hit the tiles, the thorns dissolved like sugar. The blood on her wrists did not fall. It threaded back into the skin and disappeared, not as if healed, but as if collected. You may go, she said. You touched nothing you cannot carry. You left something that will not rot. That is the law. Is that all? I asked, because what is a boundary but an invitation to test if anyone is watching? For tonight, she said, the garden does not exist to entertain you. It exists to remind you that wanting is a discipline. Return if you are prepared to practice. Dues throughs. Penelope, Cassian said, and there was the smallest, oldest ache in the way he spoke her name, like a man touching the cold side of a pillow he used to own. Why open now? Why her? She looked at me. I did not flinch. I had already given up the belief that flinching buys mercy. We had both, tonight, paid for the right to look. Because she counts, Penelope said, and because you were mistaking austerity for holiness. The house prefers accuracy, And because you both stopped mistaking punishment for proof. The sundial ticked from asterisk when asterisk to asterisk again asterisk and back, not visibly, not audibly, but in the way the skin knows a weather change before windows do. Penelope stepped backward into the foliage without moving her feet. The roses adjusted to her absence and recorded it as a petal that would refuse to brown. We stood alone. Leto appeared at the gate, where there was no longer a gate, and made her way toward us with the insouciant care of someone who knows where the knives are kept and how to dance with them. I wanted to laugh, which is sometimes how the body disposes of awe. I did not. Instead, I reached for Cassian's hand, and he gave it in the formal way men who are always asked to give things learn to give, firm, reliable, without asking what it was for. For the first time since I'd met him, I felt the heat of him without feeling his self-control standing in front of it the way glass stands in front of a flame. "Frances will murder us," I said. "She will pronounce us fools and feed us soup," he said, "which is a version of murder I consent to." We walked back through the paths that had become briefly commonsensical. When we reached the inner threshold, no iron gate now, only the memory of one, which is sometimes a better lock. The house exhaled and let the garden scent go as if returning a borrowed dress. The outer garden received us with the cheerful indifference of a room you tidy before leaving, so that it will receive you without complaint when you return. Inside, Frances waited at the foot of the stair, arms crossed, wearing an expression that resembled disdain until you trained your eyes to see the scaffolding of worry beneath. "Well?" she asked. "It opened," Cassian said. "I smelled it," she said. "The roses nearly walked in themselves. Did you leave your fool's gold?" "I left a habit," I said. "Finally," she said, and turned for the kitchen as if we were a chore she had been expecting but not dreading. "There's broth warming. Sit. If you lie to me about anything important, the spoons will bend." We obeyed. Attention trained until it felt like surrender, Cassian had said on my first day. It turned out to be a talent we shared. Over bowls of broth that tasted exactly like mercy disguised as vegetables, Frances listened, interrupting only to remove assumptions the way a good cook skims fat. When we told her what we had left, she harumphed in a way that sounded like approval's grandmother. "And what did you take, if anything?" she asked. "I think," I said slowly, "I took back the part of me that thought I could be safe by being useful. It's heavier than I expected." "Good," she said. "Safety makes poor furniture. It's stayed on him." "And you?" she asked Cassian, without looking at him, as if sparing him the gaze made the question softer. "I took a permission slip I had forged for myself and burned it," he said. "It was never signed. I have been excusing myself from my own life." Frances leaned across the table and put one finger on the back of his hand. "You are allowed to be simple," she said. "It will not ruin the architecture." After she sent us away with a basket of bread and orders to sleep as if you work for a living, I climbed to my room with a tiredness that felt like a long drive completed. On the mantel, under the glass dome that held the dry black sprig I had refused to examine, something had changed. The sprig was no longer merely dry. At its tip, a point of color had appeared, not bloom, not leaf, something like ink, thinking about becoming a word. I lifted the dome. The air under it made my mouth taste like pennies in rain. I did not touch the sprig. I replaced the glass and wrote on a slip of paper from my notebook, asterisk, resurrection, progress, asterisk, I slid the slip under the dome's lip the way a person slides a note beneath a hotel door without wanting to knock. The label, Saturday. The letters looked like a dare I had agreed to without reading. Sleep came. It did not steal. It arrived like someone who had been given a key and used it without apology. When I woke, morning had rehearsed itself enough times to be ready to perform. The house's bones crackled luxuriously as if stretching in sunlight. Leto sat on the windowsill with the air of a judge done for the day. On my desk lay an envelope addressed in a hand that was firm enough to be accused of cruelty and innocent of the charge. Asterisk, asterisk, Elodie Voss. Asterisk, asterisk, inside. A card with the house's crest, an iron rose, and a single line. Asterisk, asterisk. The bitter bloom opens when counted with mercy. P. Asterisk, asterisk. Unhelpful, I told the card, but precise. I went downstairs. Frances pressed a cup of coffee into my hand and a pencil behind my ear, as if equipping a soldier in a war against mauvaise foi. The library, she said. Begin on the west wall. If a book refuses to be read, tell it someone handsome wanted it. What of Cassian? I asked, and did not look sorry to be asking. Out, she said. He does that sometimes after the garden. Don't mistake it for absconding. It's him practicing, not locking doors. He returns. Where? I said. Where men go to remind themselves their bodies are not only coats for their minds, she said. He will come back smelling of sea and apology. You will forgive both. In the library, I set up an index system and felt the house approve. Some rooms liked polish. This room liked accuracy. Titles slid into order with the quiet joy a mind feels when its questions are answered in the order it meant to ask them. By noon, the black iron key in my pocket had made itself known the way a tooth makes itself known when you bite down on the wrong side of an old memory. It had weight, it had a temperature that ignored the ambient. It had a will, or perhaps I had given it one. Door I should never open, I said to it, to myself, to the empty room performing emptiness like a professional. Define never. The key remained professionally silent. I found the door by not looking for it. The corridor on the second floor had a section that never balanced, as if a picture had once hung there that took with it, when removed, the precise amount of gravity assigned to that wall. Behind a velvet curtain, aubergine, faded where hands had considered it, a panel concealed a keyhole. Around the keyhole, a bloom of scratches suggested impatient attempts at entry. The key fit like an accusation. I did not turn it. Frances will know, I said aloud, and Leto, who had followed and lay coiled like punctuation at my feet, sneezed as if in agreement. I turned the key. The lock did not click so much as sigh. The panel swung. The room beyond was small, windowless, whitewashed to the kind of white landlords call fresh. Shelves lined the walls. On the shelves, boxes labeled in Cassian's hand. On the boxes, names, not of objects, of people. I stood very still. A label is one of the oldest spells. It can make and unmake a person if used carelessly. I lifted a box. It had weight without mass. Inside, letters tied with a ribbon, the color of baked plums, a photograph of a woman laughing with her head thrown back, the silvering at its edges kept at bay by the ritual of being looked at. A menu with a circle in red pencil around asterisk, asterisk, bouillabaisse, asterisk, asterisk. Each box held a life edited to proof of tenderness. None of them were Penelope's. None were mine. The names asterisk, asterisk, Simon L., asterisk, 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 Omar R, asterisk, 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 M, halberd, asterisk, asterisk. There were dozens. The room was a catalogue of what the house had rescued from being the kind of unsaid that rots. Cassian, I breathed. What will you do? Asked the air. And whether it was the house or my own better self or Penelope again, I could not say. I could do many things. I could close the door and keep the secret for him and let it turn me slowly into a shrine. I could show Frances and let her separate the useful from the beloved. I could confront Cassian, which is a word we use for the kind of honesty that is performed to secure the upper hand. Or I could do the work I had been hired to do. I took the first box to the desk. I made a ledger, asterisk, asterisk, accession no, asterisk, 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 donor, asterisk, 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 date, asterisk, 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 contents, asterisk, 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 condition, asterisk, wrote Cassian's name as donor because the law is what we choose when we want to live among other people and not among exceptions. I gave the boxes numbers and the numbers dignity and the dignity a home. I did not reduce the contents to their fetish value. I wrote down love as often as I wrote down paper and ink. It is possible to be exact and not be cruel. Penelope had been right. The house preferred accuracy. I had paid my price and learned the alphabet it expected me to use. When Cassian returned, he smelled of sea and apology, as promised. He stood in the doorway of the little room and did not cross the threshold. I was going to show you, he said. You did, I answered without looking up. You just weren't in the room when it happened. He came in then, slowly, as if the floor had opinions about the speed of his steps. It is not theft, he said, sitting on the low stool meant for someone who had trouble standing for long confessions. People bring me these because they cannot bear to keep them and cannot bear to throw them away. The bitter bloom will not take what is not unsaid. These are said things without homes. And then, you kept them behind a door you told me not to open, I said. That's not quite saying. I am not a priest, he said. I do not know the proper prayers for returning tenderness to circulation. You could have asked, I said, still writing. My hand had learned the rhythm of this room, the cadence of names and dates like waves. I do not ask well, he said. I have survived on not needing things. Some survival techniques look like virtues until you are asked to love. Then they look like sabotage. I put my pencil down. All right, I said, ask. He looked at me then, and everything in him that preferred locks over windows did not so much soften as step aside to let light through. Help me, he said. Help me make this into something that does not punish people for what they loved. Yes, I said. It was the first simple yes I had given in years that did not feel strategic. We made rules. We made them the way you make bread, with ingredients that improve when handled. We would contact donors where possible, ask permission to anonymize or exhibit, and return anything asked to be returned. We would open the library by appointment to people who needed to sit with their archives under supervision that looked like kindness disguised as policy. We would ask the bitter bloom for an entrance on specific nights according to a calendar we did not invent but listened for. Love gives punishment. Love gives life. We would not make a museum of either gesture. Frances approved, or rather, she did not disapprove, which, from her, was benediction. "You'll need a glass case for miracles," she said dryly, and then added, softer, "and a bench for when the miracles break your knees." At dusk, we took cuttings in the glass house. The pot labeled asterisk, asterisk, resurrection, pending asterisk, asterisk, had decided on a course. A red nub had declared itself at the node. Cassian held the stem as I made the cut. He winced, not at the plant's pain plants like being made into more of themselves, but at his own. "Don't romanticize your wounds," I said. "They will only follow you. Prosedshage. And in the safe onda, panda." "I am trying," he said, smiling a little, "to obey a kinder law." We planted together. Leto supervised, tails switching like a metronome set to human patience. In the inner garden, a breeze lifted the roses and set them down without asking for anything in return. Penelope did not appear. I did not need her to. We had read the law and agreed to live under it without pretending we wrote it. That night, before sleeping, I walked once more to the unlabeled cloche that now held my abandonment like a folded cloth. I did not remove it. I did not need to. I set my hand on the glass and felt the faint hum of what we call peace when we are being earnest, and what we call boredom when we are afraid to trust it. In my room, I found a sheet of paper under the black sprig's dome. I had not put it there. The sprig had unfurled another millimeter toward leaf on the paper. Two words in a hand I recognized now as Penelope's, though I had never seen her write asterisk, asterisk, count kindly. Asterisk, asterisk. I laughed then, quietly, into the dark where laughter carries without disturbing. It was the instruction I had always wanted, but pretended was not rigorous enough to constitute a vocation. In bed, I lay still. The house did not haunt. It remembered. It let me sleep inside its remembering the way a good book lets you fall asleep with your finger marking your place. At some hour, I will always be able to identify only by smell. Roses moved through my dreams and did not count my teeth. They counted something else. Instances of mercy. They counted yeses that were not bargains. They counted how many doors we had left unlocked on purpose. In the morning, we began again the kind of beginning that refuses to call itself a second chance because it does not admit the first was a failure. People came by appointment. They brought boxes and left lighter. They sat in the library and read letters they had hidden from themselves, and then left us money as if paying a small tax to a god who did not require sacrifice but appreciated overhead. We were accused by some of exploiting grief. We were thanked by others for laundering the ache and returning it in wearable fabric. Both were right. We answered our accusations with receipts and our thanks with tea. On a Tuesday that felt like a page between chapters, a woman in a coat the color of compliance arrived and asked to see Box 14, asterisk, asterisk, M. Halberd, asterisk, asterisk. We brought it to her. She untied the ribbon with hands that had paid for and forgiven 5 kinds of manicure. She read a letter and then, without weeping, closed her eyes and stood in the kind of quiet that changes the temperature of the room. When she opened them, she looked at me and not at Cassian. "Keep it," she said. "Make it part of whatever you are doing that lets me breathe." "Yes," I said. As she left, she paused before the door to the corridor, not the forbidden one, the one that led past the sundial that measured what grammar we were required to use to remain honest. "Do you go in there often?" she asked, chin toward the garden that did not always exist for those who had not learned to ask for it, without believing they were owed. "Only when invited," I said. She nodded. "It smells like the day I learned I had to apologize for wanting," she said, and left without needing us to understand. Cassian came to stand beside me. He did not touch me. He did not touch me. We were what the law had made us, people careful with power, careless with pretense. "I wanted you from the minute you corrected me in the foyer," he said. The audacity of that sentence, that he would speak straight at the truth without involving a corridor, moved through me like weather. I did not say so because wanting turns me into a man I despise, calculating, patient past the point of ethics, excellent at convincing people to surrender, so I can call it generosity. "And now?" I asked. My voice did not tremble. I would have forgiven it if it had. "Now I want you in a way that does not require you to become smaller to fit," he said. "I want to put down the rooms with locks and live in the garden that opens when counted with mercy." "Say it like a human," I said, smiling because mercy likes to be teased. "I would like," he said, mouth twitching, eyes very gray, "to take you to dinner at the table we already own, and to kiss you in a room where no one has ever apologized for wanting, and to wake with you and discover if the house can tolerate two people being simple at once." "Yes," I said, for the second time in as many days. Saying yes was a practice. I had long despised sports because they require repetition. I forgave them then. We kissed in the conservatory with the windows open and the roses outside, practicing not to punish us for making noise. It was a kiss not of rescue but of recognition, the kind where you do not burn the map because you prefer getting lost. You fold it and put it in the drawer for when the weather turns. It tasted like lemon oil and rain, and the soup Francis had fed us, and the word asterisk, asterisk, again, asterisk, asterisk, when spoken by someone who has learned to stop using it as a weapon. Later, at the edge of sleep, we lay in a house that had been taught by a dead woman and two living ones, and one man who paid attention with his whole throat to prefer accuracy to austerity. The bitter bloom remained where it had always been, a law within a garden. We did not seek to own it. We had learned what ownership asks in exchange and chose a different currency. The iron gate that had once been the only thing between us and what we thought we wanted was not there anymore when I looked for it. In its place, a path made of tile stamped with letters that could be arranged to spell what we liked. We did not put our names there. We spelled a sentence and left it for anyone who came after, because archives that hoard are mausoleums, and archives that speak are villages. Asterisk, asterisk. Love gives punishment. Love gives life. Asterisk, asterisk. The law had not changed. We had, in the morning, when the sun came in through the east windows and tried on the room as if deciding whether to buy it, I went downstairs to water the cuttings. On the bench beneath the glass, the label I had written had been amended. A precise hand Cassian's had crossed out asterisk, asterisk, pending asterisk, asterisk, and written asterisk, asterisk, in progress, asterisk, asterisk. Beside it, in ink that bloomed slightly where the paper remembered being a plant, asterisk, asterisk, E and C, asterisk, asterisk. I did not correct his addition with my own neatness. I let the two initials sit together. The sprig agreed to it. It pushed a dark leaf into the room and held it up to the light without asking to be anything but what it was becoming.